Well, hey YouTube, it's Petey Two Finger, and I'm gonna be I'm gonna be doing a Vero layout tonight when my wife comes home. You can see this. I've got this marked up. Do I need a flashlight? Yeah, here, let me get this flashlight so you can see. This is a strip border Vero, and I've got two cutouts there. You can see where I removed that strip, that's chunk of conductive strip. So where I have these markings, that's where each component goes, and then where there's some lines over here on the PCB on the Vero. Those lines that are going this way, that indicates where I solder the input wire, the 9 volt, the ground, the output wire. So this is it's called a MOSFET boost, and it's a clean boost. I'm building an amplifier, and there's going to be a distortion channel and a clean channel, and that distortion channel is loud. Not only does it clip, and a part of that clipping is boosting the sound up quite a bit. So there would be a deficit of sound between the clean and the dirty. So in order to boost the clean sound to make it match the level of the dirty, I'm going to be building this AMZ. AMZ Effects, that's the name of a guy, Jack Orman, who did a lot of really good work. And this is kind of a famous circuit in the DIY community. A lot of people have built it. I have one here. It's one of the first things I built. It uses a BS170, which is the part number of the transistor. And there's also a 9.1 volt Zener, or do you say Zener, diode. Now, my first build, I had read, someone said, oh, you can leave out that Zener diode. It's just for polarity protection. And I did that. And then about 3 months later, because I use this pedal, it's like everything just sounds better with it on. You know, a little bit of boost goes a long way for your sound, even if you're playing clean, especially if you're playing clean. That's the secret. Now, it ended up dying, and I asked on the forum, and they said, when I asked, I said, look, I didn't build this with the Zener diode because I simply didn't have it in stock. And they said, oh, well, yeah, they're really sensitive to electrostatic. So more than likely what happened was there was a little line voltage or something on there, and it took it out. And that's why you should always build the circuit with the proper protection parts. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. This like 3 days in a row we built circuits and none of them worked. I was using old layouts that I had downloaded like around like 2008 or so, and I just had bad luck. One of them may have been a bad capacitor. I've got these cheap multi-layer poly caps, and we've run into some bad capacitors. You hear about this. So tonight I'm going to really make sure that we're able to test those. Gomti, my wife, my partner, she tests stuff, and she let a couple through without testing them, and for whatever reason, I guess they weren't showing up. She wasn't getting a reading, and she got frustrated and thought, well, it's such a low value capacitor, and this test on this meter was frustrating her. So I had one that wasn't passing any signal, and when I use it's called a audio test probe, and what that is, you use that in conjunction with a signal generator. So you shoot a signal in like it's a tone, a test tone, beep, and then you take the test probe, hook that up to your amplifier. Basically, the test probe is directly connected to the amp, with the exception of there's a capacitor to block any DC voltage. okay, because the audio is AC. So the test probe, all it is a pointy metal guy. Like mine it's a pen. I used a coat hanger and sharpened that and ran it through a Bic pen and a soldered wire onto that. So I have this pen with a metal tip, and the other wire is the ground. So you connect the ground, and then you can go right off the jack, the input, and test it. Beep, okay, I've got it coming in. And then you go on to the circuit board and you go through the parts until you lose that signal. And it can be beneficial in figuring out exactly where the problem is. So, like I said, we had 3 bad days where we went through this process, pulled the parts, built the circuits, and had nothing. Nothing. And one of them passed a little signal. The other one was just silent. And then the last one, I ended up removing one of those capacitors and soldering a replacement on, and then it passed a little bit audio, but the way that the potentiometer threw was not right, and it was not boosting like it should. And if it's a low parts count circuit and I go back and look at the layout and it doesn't say verified on it, and I've went through everything and triple checked, my only assumption at that point is that it's a bad layout and I need to move on. So yeah, that's what I got going on today. I went through and this process here of marking everything, like I said, really makes my job a lot easier when I'm soldering, because I can sit and I have my partner hand me, she'll say this is R1, we'll start with the resistors, and I can go through this even before I start soldering and say, okay, I'm on the first row and there's a 3 gap at the top, which means 3 spots with nothing. And then we've got one which is a 6 and it runs all the way to the bottom. And my wife will be looking at a computer image of the layout where it shows, yeah, there's 3 gaps, and then that resistor is 6 spaces and it goes to the bottom. And she'll reply yes, and I'll say, okay, next row starting on the bottom, there's a 2 gap, and then we've got a 3 with a 4 buddy. And that means there's a part that takes up 3 spaces, and a buddy means that it butts right up against it with no gap. So we've developed our own little, it's called Tell Me a Story. And we do that to double check our work. And that ensures that there's a real minute window for error when we work together like that. So that's my system for building pedals. That's what I got going on tonight. And hey, do you want to see something that I learned today? This is interesting. I know I'm always talking about my disdain for David Gilmour. And I get people, fans of David Gilmour. I get that people who are upset with me, people who don't like Roger Waters. If you want to know the real Pink Floyd sound, go to a David Gilmour concert, because he has a better voice than Roger Waters. That's what a comment that I read on Waters' concert announcement. He's touring again, and someone made this comment, and it's like, David Gilmour's not touring. He sold all of his gear. Like, he's never going back out on the road. It's done. So yeah, if you want to check out the Pink Floyd sound, you're stuck with little old Roger Waters. Anyway, I cannot tell you how much I adore David Gilmour's guitar playing. I really do. It's a lot of other stuff of how he's carried himself, how he broke up the band. That's where I take issue with him. But with his art and with his guitar playing, I think he was... he gave a lot of people who can't play the guitar naturally, like some guys can pick it up and within a year they're doing this up and down the neck, arpeggio, sweep picking. For the rest of us who don't have that talent, David Gilmour was the glimmer of hope, because he would hit one note, bend it a little, and do a little bit of whammy bar, and it was like, it would pull this emotion out of that sound and transmute it right to the listener. and it was magical. And he could make this music that it got fast at points, but for the most part, it's really emotional, soulful playing. So I have tremendous respect for David Gilmour. I really do. And today I wanted to take a look at, excuse me, I got to get this set up for you. Gilmourish is it's a dude, Bjorn, he's a Swede, and he talks about getting Dave Gilmour tones. So we're going to talk about the Yamaha RA200. Now let's scroll down and take a look at these pictures. It's a rotating, it's like a Leslie. It's a rotating speaker. So here's one of the rotating units. And in the back we have some motors and some wiring. Here's our amplifier controls, including reverb. It's got a spring reverb. The tremolo speed, external speaker cabinet, along with what's not pictured is a remote. There's a remote switch that you can adjust the speed on it. 2 settings, fast and slow. And this is something that you don't hear talked about so much when they talk about David Gilmour's gear. Like many guitarists in the late 60s and early 70s, Gilmour's secret weapon in creating his magical tone was blending his high watt amps with rotating speakers. The effect can be heard on many Floyd recordings, and it was an essential part of his live tone in 71 to 83 and again in 94. Donald Leslie designed the Leslie rotating speaker in the mid-40s. The amp was intended for Hammond organ simulating a Doppler effect. The tone is pitched up and down by the rotating horn, and the effect, like the effect of an ambulance driving by. The cabinet consists of a top treble rotating horn and a bass sub rotating sound baffle. Leslie soon became a popular effect for both guitars and vocals. The Beatles were the first to use the Leslie on the vocals, in addition to being the main amp for most organs. And yes, those Leslies were heavy. They were some of the most dreaded gear that the roadie would have to lug around. David Gilmour used the Leslie in his compositions on Ummagumma and a couple of songs on Atom Heart Mother album, but it was a Round Metal album where he integrated the speaker in both his studio and stage sound. Between 71 and 75, he's seen using different Leslie cabinets on stage, and most of Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here were recorded with high watt and Fender amps and a Leslie cabinet. See the David Gilmour guide for each album for more details. So after Wish You Were Here, he introduced in 1976 introduced the Yamaha, and it's a solid state 200 watt amp. It has 3 rotating speakers in the top compartment. So again, I want to point that out, okay? This is the guitar player that a lot of people worship, and his tone secret is solid state. That means there's no tubes. Sorry. The Yamaha is a 200 watt solid state amp with 3 rotating speakers in the top compartment, rotating in the same speed on an axis rather than the usual horizontal spin. In addition to the main compartment has 4 Yamaha JA3052A 12-inch 60 watt stationary speakers. 3 amp circuits power the cab, 1 for the rotating speakers and 2 for the main speaker cabinet. The back panel has the controls, and there is a tremolo speed controlling the slow and maximum speed is fixed. There's also a small foot pedal with 2 switches. The whole thing is 45.5 inches tall and weighs 205 pounds. So it goes on, there's more information here if you'd like to learn. He used it on Animals, which was 1976 and 1977. David Gilmour's self-titled solo album in 1978. There's a beautiful instrumental song called Mihalis, which is mostly Electric Mistress, which is it's an old analog Bucket Brigade delay chip flanger pedal that was made by Electro Harmonics. It featured a 110 volt power cord, so it had an inboard transformer, and they were notorious for being noisy and breaking down. Raise My Rent, you can hear the slightly hollow rotating throaty tone on the cleans and the distortions. And yes, I'm well familiar with that album. It has its moments where it really shines. During The Wall, they brought it in, but it wasn't the primary. Like, they used it in conjunction with other amplifiers, so it's not as prominent. And he also used it on the Final Cut, and in the present day, he used it in the Barn sessions. He's got it set up with these Neumann mics on the tweeter and a Shure SM57 on the speaker. So that was something that it's a huge part of his tone. Like, there's a video of a guy and he's imitating the chorus effect that you hear on Shine On You Crazy Diamond, but he's off camera and he's using whammy bar in time with the dipping in and out of the chorus. So it's kind of a really misleading video. And also because he's using the Yamaha, and on that album and live, David didn't use that. He used the Leslie, which is different. It's a different... The Leslie spins around like this, where this spins around like this. There's 3 speakers that spin, so I'm trying to think, is that Leslie in thirds too, or is it just 2? Either way, it's different. It's a different sound. And that's something that we don't hear so much when they talk about David Gilmour's gear, simply because it's the only way to replicate it is to get one of these things. And they weigh 205 pounds. So that was something interesting. I just wanted to share that with you guys today. And also the sentiment of how much I really do appreciate that guy as a player. As a younger man before the arguments of The Wall, I really look up to David Gilmour. It was a tough time for me. My father died. I was 15, and Pink Floyd broke up. And I was in a really bad private Baptist school, which didn't allow rock and roll. They were really strict about like haircut and dating or playing cards, listening to rock and roll, going to movies, all the stuff you weren't supposed to do. And it was a hypercharged, over-sexualized atmosphere. They were so prohibited to do anything that everyone was walking around super horny. And it was just very awkward, and like kids were getting busted for holding hands and getting spanked by the pastor, and just an absolutely bizarre experience for me to be in this situation of falling in love with this music and having it really be an answer for me. Maybe it didn't have a real answer, but it helped me with the feelings that I was dealing with like the loss of my father and being in this horribly repressive school, and then they broke up. So maybe it's a little bit easier for you to comprehend. Eventually, as more and more information came out, and we come to learn that if you look into it, you find what David Gilmour did directly resulted in the demise of that band with Roger Waters' exit, and then David Gilmour took it over and went on to make 2 substandard albums. So at that point, looking at it from that angle as, do you want to say a true fan or a delusional? Maybe I'm just crazy from reading all the accounts and putting the story together and realizing what occurred and why the band broke up, that if Gilmour would have went along with Waters and not There was so much problems in that band. People, they weren't doing their job, and Waters had a grandiose vision. So, if people would have done their job and they would have had good attitudes, I feel that the final cut never would have been released. There would have been a much different, it would have been Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, more likely. Would have been the next album. And who knows what would have happened. I know that David Gilmour continues to have a chip on his shoulder with Roger, whereas it was very difficult for them to come together at Live 8. And you see kind of how they all three got together and Waters was off by himself. And he's like, come on, we're all going to put our arms around each other. Can we? And that was it. That was the moment, And it was bittersweet. It wasn't happy for me, Live 8. Live 8 sucked. It really did. I mean, I was weeping during Live 8. I was a little bit drunk, but it represented just like everything that Roger wrote about trying to change and come together, and then the band fell apart because of the issues that Waters was writing about, greed. And at that point, like, I don't know how you could be legitimately a fan of this band and understand the concepts that they were writing about and side with David Gilmour. I don't understand that. I just don't get it at all. To me, Waters' message was everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon, meaning entropy and evil, and that you have to be proactive and work your ass off to make any little positive thing happen, and that it is going to be a lot of work if we're going to turn the ship around. And that's a very powerful, very inspiring message for me. And on the other side of the table, I don't know. I don't see much. I'm sorry, I don't. I looked through David Gilmour's catalog. I know it. I've heard all of those songs. I've read all the lyrics, and I just don't. There's no message there. There's nothing. It's vacant. And on the other side of that coin, he's an incredible musician, super, super talented, and they really did complement each other so unbelievably well. If you listen to the soloing, like Time, the solo for Time, how it mirrors the music and all of that stuff, all of it, how he tried to paint a picture of the young Syd Barrett and the solos in Shine On You Crazy Diamond, how he tried to create this sense of mystery. And then that thing about how the bounce in a step when he walked, you can hear that in some of the soloing when he gets going. So the guy, I mean, he's a absolutely brilliant musician, and I am unbelievably proud to be a Pink Floyd fan, but that really doesn't have much to do with David Gilmour because of what transpired. I wish I could say, yeah, I love all of those guys. Rick Wright, talk about underrated. What an incredible musician. Nick Mason just kind of holding it down and doing his thing and being there in a supportive role, and his drums were perfect for that band. They were perfect. They were simple, but they just worked perfectly. And even Roger's repetitive bass playing, simple to the core, but perfect. And then you have, master musician Rick Wright with just painting with his keyboards and effects, and then the real emotion of David Gilmour's guitar playing, which just soars. So those guys, they were fucking wizards. They really were. That's some alchemy. They were fucking magicians. Pink Floyd, the greatest band. I mean, I really feel that way. For me, they're my favorite. They really were. And I wore that music into the ground. I listened to it so much. It's very difficult for me to talk about it with a straight face because it kind of didn't age so well, some of it. Certain albums are better than others. Dark Side of the Moon is fucking timeless. But personally, my favorite album is The Wall. And I know a lot of people hate that album. I could talk about Pink Floyd. Once I get started on this, I could talk about it for a long time. But yeah, I wanted to elaborate a little bit more and shed some of my true feelings about David Gilmour, the musician, not David Gilmour, the tyrant who is responsible for the demise of the greatest band that ever made music on the face of this earth. Because that's how I look at those guys. They were the greatest of all time, in my opinion. And I firmly believe if he would have done his fucking job, and sure, you're going to have to put up with the megalomaniac. Yes, the guy is fucking nuts, and he is going to be unbelievably difficult to work with. But then you end up having your name on this thing that's going to live forever. Right? I don't know. I would have put up. I mean, people. One of the things people say is, "Oh, you act like you were there." Well, I know one thing. If I was there, I don't think I would have condied the fucking Condor. Coming down on Carrion. I don't think I would have condied the fucking band name and went out and made those two horrible momentary lapse of the Division Bell albums. I wouldn't have done that. So, ultimately, we all have our opinions. And this is mine. If you have a different opinion, if you love David Gilmour and you can't stand Roger Waters, find another video to go comment on. Don't fucking comment on this one. Okay? You don't deserve to. Because I don't think there's many people out there that had a deep connection to that music as I did. What I went through coming up. So you can just kind of let me say what I have to say about it and go, Petey feels strongly that David Gilmour knew exactly what he was doing and schemed and pouted and ruined the band, forcing Roger Waters to leave, knowing that he was going to start it up again without him, and that everything would be a lot easier. And if you can't see that's what occurred, well, that's what occurred. And to me, that's why I don't like David Gilmour. There's a lot of other reasons. This video's gone long enough. If you have to leave some pro Gilmour comment, I'm going to come back with some snappy answer, and then I'm going to delete your comment, and I'm going to shadow ban you from my channel. So enjoy. Take care of yourselves. Wish me luck on this circuit. I'm going to be building this amp. I can't wait to get this one finished. I can't wait to get out and make some live music. I've been thinking a lot about writing music in a different style. I'm locked into this one particular thing. And I can't continue flogging that horse. I need to come up with something different. Post-punk, post-rock. That's what I have to think about. Music that doesn't sound good and it's abrasive. Anyway, take care of yourselves, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really do. And hug your pets. Peace.